I find it vexing that once the IG is involved, nobody else can do anything.
Our policy, and it's been my understanding when I chaired the Council of Inspectors General across the government, that if the IG starts an investigation, the agency will not themselves run a competing investigation to try to get there first. That basically the IG advises us what the investigations are. When they advise us about those investigations, we allow them to proceed.
People cite ongoing IG investigations when it suits them to not cooperate, and they don't cite ongoing IG investigations when it doesn't suit them.
That's not my policy.
Well, you can certainly understand how a cynic might view it that way, right?
The IRS commissioner up on Capitol Hill for the fourth time answering questions about this hard drive, whether it was scratched, whether Lois Lerner's emails were retrievable or not. And he says the IG told him not to talk to any more witnesses. What about all of this? Let's bring in our panel. Steve Hayes, senior writer for the Weekly Standard. A.B. Stoddard, associate editor of The Hill, and syndicated columnist Charles Krauthammer in Brady Bunch boxes tonight. Okay, Steve, what do you think of all this?
Well, I mean, I think he had another tough day on Capitol Hill. We would have expected that he would have had another tough day, particularly answering questions about why he didn't notify members of Congress earlier about these developments with Lois Lerner's emails. But I think the most important development may have come after the hearing when he was talking to reporters and, in effect, became a character witness for Lois Lerner, saying, well, look, if Lois Lerner was hiding emails, she wouldn't have produced or written 43,000 emails on her own, suggesting that he knows what she was doing, that she didn't do that. I think that's a very dangerous place for John Koskinen to go, in effect, defending Lois Lerner, particularly because we've got emails in which we know that Lois Lerner was, in fact, trying to hide things, was, in fact, trying to keep things from Congress. So it makes you wonder, why is John Koskinen going beyond defending the IRS as an institution, beyond answering questions truthfully, and defending somebody like Lois Lerner?
A.B., doesn't this get increasingly sticky for the Obama administration and the IRS?
This has really become a sideshow. If you look at the descriptions coming out of the IRS about what happened to Lois Lerner's emails, first with a computer crash, then a recycling event, then maybe they were scratched and maybe they were shattered. I mean, really sounds like a bunch of frat boys at the bottom of their keg at 2 o'clock in the morning. John Koskinen came in as a cleanup artist, a turnaround artist, someone with sterling credentials as a management expert, and he has made a fool of himself in this testimony. We now know, at one point early on, did not know about the fact that the emails were lost. When he later learned, he did not inform Congress. Today, he basically said, I don't ask really questions about this stuff. I don't look into it. His job is not, as Steve points out, to defend Lois Lerner and make explanations for why things get scratched or shelved or lost. His job is to find out, ask the tough questions, and clean it up. And that's exactly what he's not doing.
All right, so Charles, here's the question. How many people are paying attention to this? I guess the question is also, is the media paying attention to this story as it continues to develop? Take a look at the number 2 on our poll, the question about the treatment, fair treatment by the IRS. The question reads, how competent is the Obama administration in managing fair treatment by the IRS? And look at the breakdown, varied somewhat, 45%, not varied, not 49%.
Well, it tells you that the story has penetrated. It's not obviously as hot now as it was a year ago when it burst, when even the president had to express outrage, had to fire the acting director and pretend this was an awful thing. And then, of course, a few months later, he says on the air that there isn't a smidgen of corruption. But I do think right now, with the volume of crises around the world, Ukraine, the Middle East, and everything, the border, it's now not obviously the #1 issue, but that doesn't mean that it isn't important and it isn't sustainable. As long as there's new information, and there's got to be, because what we're hearing from the IRS, the witnesses, especially from the director, is the sort of the strategic uses of ignorance. He says, I don't know this, I didn't know that. And of course, and then the deliberate ignorance by saying, you know, as long as the IG is investigating, we can't touch this. This is the classic response in a cover-up where you say, there's an ongoing investigation, so I got to stay out of it, which is a way of saying, I'm going to stall and delay and stonewall. That works on some stuff, but ultimately, I think this stuff is going to come out.
All right, down the road, Charles, AB, then Steve, special prosecutor or not?
No, not with this administration.
I don't think so.
I don't think you can rule it out at this point. We're getting so much more information that at a certain point, I think the levee may break.
Next up, the crisis in Ukraine and foreign policy in general for this administration.